Welcome to One Brothas Mind, and I am KD Smooth. Today we will question and challenge popular information and views from a B1 perspective, while we expose the real facts you need. We do this to strengthen your logical, critical, and discerning thinking skills. Because in today's world, hard choices are mandatory and they come with consequences. So you need all the information. And at One Brothas Mind, we do this from a B1 Yeshua the Christ followers perspective. Now, if you're not ready, you better get ready with KD Smooth at One Brothas Mind. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's KD Smooth coming back at you with a new report. I pray you all are doing well. Shalom, family. In today's report, we are going to chop it up on this issue on your screen. The immigrant invasion and the effects on the so-called black community. Yeah, we're gonna put the One Brothas Mind spin on this. We're gonna dig into this issue, discuss several aspects of it, and try to shed some light on what we, the so-called black community or foundational black Americans, can do and should be doing in response to this issue. Okay, family, as a part of this report, I'm going to share with you a couple of brief clips that I have lined up for you as well. So, just before we get started, family, remember to smash the like button, if you appreciate our content here at One Brothas Mind, and share this report on all your social media with all your peoples. And be sure to be subscribed. Click the subscribe button so you can make sure you receive the notifications when we upload or add new content to our channel here. Help us grow. Okay. With that being said, family, again, we're discussing this evening the immigrant invasion, as some people are calling it, and the effects on the so-called black community. As many of you know, I've been watching over the lamestream media. There's thousands of immigrants coming in, especially through the southern border. And actually recently, Biden just passed a new law just out of thin blue air. I think it was in regards to either specifically New York or really all of the immigrants that have recently crossed the border, which was close to 500,000, that they now have the ability to attain work permits, which essentially gives them temporary citizenship. Just snap of a finger. Now, there's a variety of reasons why, many say this was done. One of them was so that, they're here, they want to work and be able to find jobs and whatnot, but without work permits, they couldn't do that legally. So many people say, well, that's the reason why. That may have been one of the reasons, but trust me, there's a whole lot of other reasons there. Family, you got to understand the way systematic white supremacy works. Basically, and we're going to go into that a bit more in detail later, but basically, family, systematic white supremacy does what it wants to do to achieve its ultimate goal, one step at a time. It doesn't usually just do everything it wants to do all at once. It does it one piece at a time to present the illusion as if they're not actually attempting to achieve their ultimate goal. And with each step or each piece at a time that it does, it generates the best sounding reasons and excuses, and it issues those over the propaganda filled lamestream media to try to sell the idea of each step or each piece by itself. But there's a long-term plan. As always, they know. Now we'll know and realize what the long-term plan fully is in 10 or 15, 20 years when we look back. So they did these things to get here. But that's just how it operates, okay? In general. So, again, let's look at some of the effects on so-called black community. Many residents, some of you have seen the reports out of New York and out of Chicago. They're clearly only putting a lot of the immigrants in shelters in the so-called black communities. They filling the black communities up, right? What they are not doing is putting immigrants in shelters in the white community, the predominantly white community. They're not doing that. One, because they don't want to do that. Two, if and when and where they actually try to do that or start doing that, you're going to see a lot of January Sixers, if you will, in the white communities come out, and they're going to wreak havoc. No, you're not bringing them in our community. And it's going to be a major problem if and when they start to try to do that. They got the room, they have the resources, and actually those communities in many ways are better suited to house the immigrants in various shelters and tent encampments. But y'all know they're not going for that. So they're saturating the so-called black communities with the immigrants. But in some places like New York, they have laws that prohibit and say you can only have so many shelters and so many people in shelters in one community or one area. You cannot oversaturate the communities with shelters and people in them. So they're having to do, all kind of trickerations to try to get around that, as well as what I put it this way, while trying to still avoid actually housing some of the immigrants in the predominantly white communities. Recently, I heard a report, one of the plans that the fool in New York just did, the shelters are full, they're saturated, they're out of room, right? So he went to the local elected officials in pretty much all of the so-called black communities, and was like, hey, find me a piece of land in your community. Give me like 2 or 3 locations in each of your communities that is a large piece of basically empty land, right? Where we can put up and build up a huge, basically tent encampment that will house many more immigrants, because you got to remember, in especially places like New York and Chicago, what have you, winter is on the way. And that's going to bring a whole new level in different dynamics into, the situation. So, yeah. So they're having to make a lot of quick moves and whatnot. And then I even heard reports they're starting to put some in places in New York and whatnot. They're starting to put like time limits on how long immigrants can stay in the actual shelters. They're trying to move them out as fast as they're moving new immigrants in. They're trying to move immigrants that have been there for a period of time out. But those immigrants, most of them have nowhere else to go still. So yeah, it's an entire mess. It's insanity. But that's what white supremacy does. It makes sense or reaches its goals out of chaos. Okay? So what are some of the effects a lot of us in the so-called black community are talking about? I've heard so-called black people talking about, the effects on jobs. Are they going to be taking jobs from us? That's a concern that I've heard expressed in the black community. Well, for some, yes. For some, no. For most in the so-called black community, if you have a degreed professional type job or career, or you have some sort of certification required job or profession, 9 times out of 10, no, 9 times there's not going to be any competition for your jobs. But for those of us in the so-called black community that are just laborers, you don't have a degree or a certification required job, and you're basically just a laborer or a service worker, which is still a laborer. For many of us, yeah. Now, some people are saying, well, most of these immigrants don't speak English, so they're not really going to be able to compete for our jobs. You don't have to know how to speak English. People, you can literally use, like, if you will, I want to say sign language, but not sign language. You can literally just physically show people who don't speak your language. You can show them what you want them to do. For example, if there's a stack of boxes over here in location A, and you want those boxes moved and stacked up in location B, you don't have to say a whole lot of words. You can, just kind of signal, pick up the box from here, take it over to this second location, set it here and stack them here. And you can just show people what you want done without fully speaking the language. And the job will get done. So there's a lot of jobs where they're not, if you're a laborer, they're not really complicated. You're doing a labor intensive function or job, right? Warehouse jobs and, all kind of other stuff. That's just labor intensive. You just need somebody to do the labor. You don't necessarily have to speak English. You can show people what you want done, and they'll just see, and they'll go ahead and show you that they understand what you want done. And you like, yes, see. And then, okay, I'll pay you this. You move these, I'll pay you for it. Okay. No problem. So, yeah, for a lot of us who are just laborers, which most so-called black people, that's what most of us are doing. Is you're just a laborer. It doesn't, your job doesn't require a whole lot of training or a whole lot of extra to actually do your job. That's why you see a lot of, immigrants working in fast food places pretty quickly, and they don't really speak very good English, but they have learned to speak enough broken English and understand enough broken English to know how to be on fries or, fill the orders, So, and there's various other jobs that are just more labor intensive than anything else that, than not. So yeah, for those of us in the so-called black community that we're just laborers or service workers, yeah, a lot of y'all, a lot of us are going to be in competition for our jobs very soon, if not already. Really, it's already happening. So, what you gonna do? And that's actually one of the main reasons why the government is allowing this to happen. Primarily because they want to provide the country with a new or a replacement slave labor force, cheap labor force. That's what they're doing. That's one of the main reasons why they're doing this and allowing this immigration to occur. Because there's a lot of people throughout the country, a lot of so-called business owners, they just need laborers. And they don't want to pay, reasonable salaries. If they can get away with it, they would pay less than minimum wage. When and where they can get away with it, but they don't want to pay reasonable U.S. salaries. They don't care if the minimum wage that they're paying you can't afford to live in the rent apartments in the United States or live in the area or the city. They don't care. They just want the cheapest labor that they possibly can find. Okay? And their mindset is, y'all figure it out, where y'all gonna live and how y'all gonna live. We don't care. That's basically what's happening. Okay? So, with that being said, another side of the job issues is a lot of our brothers and sisters that are coming across the border, they're skilled workers in the traditional skills of carpentry, home building, roofing, pouring concrete, all the construction type of skills, plumbing, electrical. They are skilled. They are, man, whether they got official certifications for and documentations for their skill or not, they can show you. I can do that. Let me show you. They may not be able to communicate that or say that in English, but they'd be like, they'll pull out, they come to the work site with their tool belt and be like, what, give me a chance. I can show you I can do that. And the foremans or business owners of those work sites will be like, all right, show me. And they'll, of course I'm adding words to this, but they'll do this stuff with hand signals. They're not really speaking, and head nods. Go ahead, show me. And the dudes come in and they'll show them like, what you want done. You show them what, they come in. It sounds complicated, but it's not. They see what needs to be done, and they like, see. And the owner or the foreman like, go ahead, show me. And they do it, and then they look at each other and they both shake their head, yes, see, yes. And they go ahead. And now they got a job. It happens that quickly oftentimes. That's why for years now it's been going on where, our brothers and sisters from south of the border, they show up at the Home Depots in a lot of major cities and just sit there and wait for, jobs for the day to come around, and that's how they pick up and make money. They are skilled, many of them. Now, what's crazy is, and you hear most of us so-called black people saying we built this country, we built all this stuff. Yeah, we did. But we fell for the trickeration of America. After so-called slavery was ended, which it never ended, y'all, but I'll touch on that in a moment. We fell for the trick. They came to our parents and was telling our parents that they needed to put us in their schools so they can teach and train us for non-labor jobs, for professional jobs, for career jobs, and all the other trickeration words they use, service jobs and all that, right? And most of our grandparents and great-grandparents, they fell for this, and, that was the thing. You got to go get your education. You got to go to college. You got to do all this stuff, right? Meanwhile, our grandparents and great-grandparents, whatnot, they had all these same skills that our brothers and sisters coming across the border had. They knew how to farm. They knew how to build houses, build roads, and lay railroads. Because we did all of the work. We did all this stuff. We were the professionals at all these trades, right? But they did this work, and because under the conditions that our grandparents and great-grandparents and so forth, under the conditions they had to do it under and not get paid for it, the best decision to them was, I got to make it so if I can get my kids chance to go to school, they can learn some stuff where they won't have to do this kind of work. It wasn't so much the work that was the problem. It was the actual slavery, the racism, the theft of wages. It was that stuff that was the problem, the disrespect, the racism. It was all that came with it. It was the environment that the work was being done in. Many of our grandparents and great-grandparents and so on, if they could do the jobs that they did back then today and receive fair wages for them, they wouldn't have a problem doing that at all. They'd be like, I'm getting paid. This is what's up. Which there's still a lot of brothers and even some sisters out there doing like construction type jobs and skilled trade type jobs. And they love their jobs because it's a different environment with those jobs today than it was 100 years ago, 150, 200 years ago. It's a totally different environment. But anyway, I digress. So they pushed us, their kids, their grandkids, and so on into the schools. And we all lost the skill of farming and raising our own food and all these construction type jobs and skilled trades. We lost all these skills. Now we got to be sitting in front of a computer to do something. And then when we go home and our cars need to be worked on or our houses need to be worked on, we got to call somebody. Most of us, we don't know how to do these stuff. We don't know how to fix a lot of this stuff no more. You see how we fell for the trick? And then in bad economic times, many of us, we lose our jobs. Our jobs downsize because we got jobs that are not skilled trade jobs, most of us today. Do you see that? So, yeah, there was a hustle. We got played. We got hustled. In fact, like I said, we were the farmers. We did all the work. We had all the expertise, right? But today, with all the shortages and everything's going on, many of us are having to try to reteach ourselves, relearn how to grow our own food again in our own gardens. Because we lost the skill. You know, for most of us, it's gone. Well, you trying to look on the internets to try to figure it out. Good luck with that. You know, you can get some of what you need to know, but it ain't gonna just, you can't just watch the internet, watch some gardening videos and then just do it and it work out perfectly. No, it's not gonna work like that. You're gonna have to do a garden 2 or 3, 4 times in a row, grow the same things over and over again and figure out, confirm what you know and figure out what you need to know or learn and how to perfect growing each thing that you're growing. You're going to have to make adjustments. You got to do, it's a lot to it, right? I started my garden. I'm on my 2nd year. This is my 2nd year. And my outcome in my 2nd year was far better than my outcome in my 1st year, my 1st attempt. You know, I actually got food. I'm eating out of my garden and I got food in the freezer and that I've put up and stuff. So I still got a little bit more to harvest. And I even got a little bit of some items that I'm growing for the fall harvest as well. So yeah, you know, it's not just automatic, but we have to relearn these things. But a lot of our brothers and sisters that are coming across the border, they already know how to do this stuff. They still doing it. They ain't never stopped doing it. They never got tricktified by the U.S. government and people in the U.S. Yeah. So other concerns that many in the so-called black community have is, what about the crime? Well, some people argue that's why they just went ahead or one of the reasons why they went ahead and passed a little, work permit law is because you got all these grown people sitting around. They can't legally work, right? But they don't want to live in a shelter. They don't want to be stuck in that condition. They want, most of them want to try to start building a life. They want to start advancing themselves in life here in the country, right? So if they can't get a job and they trying to get their hustle on, they trying to make money by any means necessary, all kind of other ways to make money start becoming an option. Various different type of crimes, I've seen reports where they're showing a lot of our sisters from across the border. They slowly but surely, they out there on the sidewalk on the stroll. Many of them, not all of them, some of them. They're like, hey man, I'm trying to come up, or I have to do this. We struggling. We don't have everything that we need. I got kids to feed, right? So on and so forth. So remember, they've been putting the majority of them in shelters in our so-called black neighborhoods. So you're gonna typically, if you're gonna try to get your hustle on or be out there in them streets, potentially doing things that are not legal, where you gonna do it where you at? I mean, they ain't like they got cars and stuff to travel all over the city. They on foot. So guess where, for the ones that are doing things that are not legal, guess where they're gonna do them? In our neighborhood. So who's getting victimized? Exactly. Yeah. They don't have much. We got a little bit more than they have. You do the math. Then, of course, in addition, there's cultural concerns. I mean, we have our own culture in the so-called black community, right? Well, these are a whole different group of people. They have their own culture, just like we do. And culturally, they do some things differently than we do. Certain things mean different things, have different meanings in their culture than it does in ours. So there's oftentimes cultural conflicts as well. You know? And then there's also the issue of services. And what I mean by that, like I said, they are putting most of the immigrants in shelters in the so-called black communities, right? So they're human beings just like we are. They need the same services that we need. They need to go to the grocery store. So if all of a sudden several 100,000 new immigrants are in your neighborhood, in your community, guess what? The grocery stores that already didn't have enough stock, they really gonna be empty. Now that you got several 100,000 more people coming to the grocery stores buying food, just all of a sudden, now you really ain't got access to food. And remember, most of our communities around the U.S. we live in food deserts already. So it's just getting worse, right? Same thing with like healthcare and healthcare clinics and whatnot. You know, it was a struggle to get a healthcare or clinic appointment for something that you needed to go in for or take your children in for before. But now you get 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 new human beings in your community. They need healthcare services too. So all of a sudden, you know, they ain't built no new clinics for the most part. So now those same clinics that were struggling, that you had to wait weeks, if not months, for a health appointment at, guess how long you gotta wait to get an appointment now with all these few new 100,000s of people in our communities? Yeah. Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot of effects there that the lamestream media, they ain't talking about. They don't care because, again, they're not putting the shelters in their communities. They're putting them in ours. So, to be clear, family, I'm not bringing up these issues because I'm against our brothers and sisters coming over from the south to the border, because honestly, I'm not. Why? Because I know the origin of this. What's the cause of this? And that's one of the things I'm going to focus here on in this report, is what's causing this. And that cause is colonialism, systematic white supremacy. But it's better known as colonialism. We've been, as a country, not us family, but as a country, we've been controlling or affecting all the countries in South America for centuries. We've been causing problems, extracting resources, extracting wealth, controlling their political systems, their governments, putting in puppet governments. We've been doing just basically colonialism, right? And we've been just sucking out the resources and wealth out of their communities, leaving all the people in South America, most of them, stuck in utter poverty, right? So, I mean, it ain't like the immigrants coming over just started coming over. They've been migrating for decades now. I mean, many decades. This is not new. for the exact same reasons. You know, I go, okay, they sucking all our money out of our countries and stuff. We don't have a way to have or make a life. Well, let's just go where they got the money at then. Go over to the U.S. They taking our money away from our country. We can't build. We can't survive. We're in sheer poverty. We might as well do what we got to do to try to get over there. In fact, tonight I have our first clip I want to share with you. We got our brother Charles Barron and our brother Professor Smalls. I'm going to share a clip with you. This is coming from Happy, capital, let's say HAPI, Happy Talks. A program, a report they just recently did. It's from the Happy, same HAPI, film, 2 words, Happy, 1, film, 2nd word, FILM, YouTube channel. They did an excellent interview with our brother Charles Barron, for those of you that know him, and our brother Professor Smalls. And they really, have one of the best breakdowns of what's happening, why it's happening, and other issues involved with it. And I want to share that report here, that clip here with you. That is our brother Charles Barron on top of your screen, and our brother Professor Smalls at the bottom. So I want to share with you and basically let them tell it in their own words, what's happening, what's going on, and what we need to know and understand, family. Okay? All right, here we go.
So it's their imperialistic foreign policies that put in dictators like Somoza in Nicaragua. They caused coups d'etats in countries across the world, and Venezuela. Of course, they've always been trying to do Cuba in. So when you look at all of that, if they change their foreign policy, pay reparations to Haitians so that they won't have to leave Haiti, France and America owes Haiti. So the first attack has to be on America's foreign policy. And as long as we allow this imperialistic foreign policy, building a whole lot of military bases, AFRICOM in Africa, and once you do that, the paradox of Africa, that it is the richest continent on the planet with the poorest people because of imperialism. That's number one. Number two, once you get to the point where, since you have this policy, and now the chickens are coming home to roost, they're coming at your shores now, and so America says, what do we do with these people? What do we do with these people? And then when you look at the Africans who are already here, that's us. They're already in shelters in my district. They're already in shelters in the Bronx. So how do we then say, oh, welcome these folks, because these are brothers and sisters. We don't want to speak against them. But how do we welcome them? And we do in our districts when people have been here for 10, 20 years are locked in shelters and not even having the same opportunities that they're granting these so-called immigrants who are now, they're trying to give them $800 a month, give them some license to do some vending and all of that. We can't even get that. So now,
one quick note, family. You heard what he just said. They're giving them vendor's license. He's absolutely correct. It's difficult for us to get vendor's licenses. And we're citizens. We got to pay all kind of fees, jump through all kind of hoops, get all kind of this or that documentation or certification on this or whatever. Most cities and states have laws. You can't just set up a pop-up anywhere on the street. But they're bypassing all of this. things that have prevented us from being able to help get our own businesses started, you know, they're just handing to them. Let's continue.
As the white imperialists do, they have those who are at the bottom fighting each other because of the imperialist policies. Let's take New York City. New York City and New York State is huge. So what does Eric Adams do? The so-called black mayor, he's really blue, Mayor Adams cop. What he does is he puts extra shelters in East New York, in Harlem, in places in the Bronx, in our communities, and Bensonhurst, which is predominantly Asian and white, has no shelters. Bay Ridge, which is basically Asian and white, has no shelters. And so they're saying we have a crisis. Well, put them in these white communities too. And then here comes Hochul. She wants to do something at Floyd Bennett Field in New York City, and the whites don't want them there. Well, we are oversaturated, and there's a law that doesn't allow for the oversaturation of shelters in a given community. Now look upstate, there's plenty land upstate. The New York State budget is $229 billion. You want to solve this? Then build some shelters, some homes for them, and all that land upstate, because we're oversaturated in black and brown communities in the city. That's why they're saying it's a crisis. Another thing, you want a shelter place for the new immigrants? Then take us out of the shelters, put us in permanent housing, and those shelters.
Us citizens is who he's referring to.
Will be available for immigrants. This thing can be settled tonight if they were serious. It can be settled tonight. And I told this to Eric Adams. I said, why don't you put them more in the white community, put our people, and we ain't saying don't come to our place, we don't like you and all of that. We ain't have no bad words for you, but for the grace of God, it could be any one of us. But we are oversaturated. So now, Eric, put them in some of the white communities. Put them upstate, Hochul. You got a lot of land upstate, and then have the money that they given to these businesses to take care of immigrants. They're making billions and billions of dollars off this. How about using that for rent subsidies for permanent housing? And say in New York City, anybody that is any developer that wants to build new housing, 30% of it has to be for those who don't have homes, or the so-called homeless. We did it in East New York. I made sure that any project I signed off on, they had to have a percentage for the homeless or the unhoused. And we got over 300 people out of homeless shelters into permanent housing. We shouldn't allow them to warehouse our people in shelters. So you put them in the shelters. They should have a program for permanent housing. They should have a program for workforce development, finding them jobs like they want to do these immigrants. And they should have a mental health program for those who are being mentally challenged, and just warehousing them and throw them in the streets. Tonight, out of this $107 billion city budget and $129 billion state budget, we could solve this problem. And the federal imperialistic policies must stop. That's why I think the ultimate solution is revolution.
Well, damn. Okay. You know what? I think you probably answered almost all the questions I had. Okay. So if this is a conversation you had with the mayor, okay, and the mayor's just like, I'm not going to do it. What can we like specifically do?
I think people need to rise up just like they do in other communities. Mm-hmm. It can't happen from the top down. It has to happen from the bottom up. Mm-hmm. I think if people begin to say, I don't care how many black faces they have in high places, that is not no damn progress. Because the blacks that they put in high places in New York State, the mayor's black, the chancellor of schools is black, the commissioner of the police is Latino now, was black, public advocate is black, the attorney general is black, the head of the state assembly is black, the head of the state senate is black, we have black borough presidents, we have black district attorneys, and we have more black poverty than we had in a long time. Black faces in high places, they are neo-colonial puppets of a colonial capitalist system that maximizes profit and greed over the need of our people. And when you put a black face on it, Kamala Harris, a black vice president, ain't heard nothing from her in a long time. But you have a black president, Barack Obama, that doesn't even mean anything. Because as long as you have a colonial capitalist system, who becomes the administrator of that, whether it's a neo-colonial black puppet like Barack Obama, or a neo-racist, fascist, ignorant madman like Donald Trump, or a neo-conservative, neoliberal Joe Biden, they all are administrators of a colonial capitalist system that creates poverty, that creates imperialist wars abroad, and that creates an immigrant crisis that can be solved overnight.
What?
Wow. But Professor Small, you have anything to add to this? Because I want to kind of go back. I know. I mean,
there you have it on the first clip, family. Brother Charles Bannon broke it down to the very last compound. So, with that being said, family, that's what's going on. And as I say here, One Brothas Mind, in other words, slavery never ended. It was just expanded. All of what Brother Barron was referring to was basically just the perpetuation of legalized slavery. As I said, slavery never ended. They've been using us, the so-called black community, and keeping us in this slavery, even using many of our own people as puppets, as he named off, trying to sell them to us as if that's progress and like we doing something. They ain't doing nothing but the same work. They're running the same program. They're the manager. Still selling McDonald's products, which is, in this example, systematic white supremacy. We're not getting anything out of it. Nothing that is improving our lives or our stance here in the U.S. Right? So, there's so much, y'all. So my contention is we shouldn't be getting overly angry at our brothers and sisters that's coming across the border, because the same colonialism, the same systematic white supremacy that is destroying and has kept their countries destroyed and in poverty and kept them in poverty, is the same enemy that we've been continually fighting here in the U.S. We have the same enemy. Now, are there some of the immigrants who don't see it that way? Yes. And just like there are some of us who don't see it that way. But you're being hoodwinked, you're being bamboozled, if you will. You're buying into the lies that's keeping people, different groups of people that are both being kept in poverty and being kept in legalized slavery against one another, fighting against one another, while the real criminals is chilling in the pool, as Chuck D once said. They sitting back laughing. So, like these slave masters. This is from a previous report I have here at One Brothas Mind. You can find this report in the One Brothas Mind live tab. Scroll down, you see this thumbnail. These are two watermelon growers, farmers. They don't do any farming. They just provided the land and the setup, and all of the immigrants do the work for slave wages, because those are the only people that they can get to come and farm their watermelons for the slave wages that they're paying. Those of us in the black community, for I think it was like $12 maybe an hour to pick watermelons in the blazing hot sun. It's like, are you crazy? But again, I go in more detail about that in this report on One Brothas Mind. But these are two watermelon slave masters from Florida, and they got other slave masters all across the country. This is what they want, or one of the reasons why they want to let all the immigrants in, because those of us in the black community have, long decided we're not doing slave labor no more for slave wages. No. Now, if they were, these two slave masters, if they were offering $24, $25 an hour, $30 an hour, then you could probably get quite a few so-called black people out here to pick these watermelons, because they're actually paying a competitive, livable wage. But they don't want to do that. They look at these slave masters, as that's taking profit out of my pocket. That's too much. Do you see how that works? So, again, as I say, family, slavery never ended in the U.S. It was only expanded. So do you see the rigged system of systematic white supremacy? Do you see how it works? It's not just here in the U.S. It's worldwide. Or you could call it colonialism. Same thing. It's worldwide. It's jacking up countries all over the world, including in South America. It's been doing that for centuries, right? So whether you call it slavery, capitalism, the market, all these other trickeration words they use, it's all the same game to systematic white supremacy. As long as they continue to get rich by using slave labor, they don't care what you call it. They'll make up a new name every few years. It doesn't matter. They're just going to keep doing the same thing. They're just calling it by a different name. That's what's been going on for hundreds of years, since colonialism started. Okay? So with that being said, I have one additional clip I want to share with you, family. Let me try to get it together here. Again, from our brother Charles Barron and our brother Professor Smalls. In fact, let me try to make a brief adjustment on this if I can for you. Yeah. All right. Let's get into this second clip. They're going to explain a bit more, go in a bit more detail on another aspect of this issue. Here we go.
We got to understand colonialism. We live in black communities in America are domestic colonies of a colonial capitalist system. And here's where they get you. They get you focusing on racism. And we have to, but racism is the ideology of capitalism. It is not the system. The system is capitalism, and then you have a socialist system, and communism is the utopian system that doesn't exist. You have communist parties and countries, but you don't have a communist government. So when we look at every black community, what is a domestic colony? A colony is when a foreign nation takes over a sovereign state and brings in its military and extracts from its natural resources from that land and the labor, slave labor. That's what colonialism is. So domestic colonialism means that we, in black communities across this country, we don't have anything like Tulsa or Rosewood in the 21st century. There's no black community where we're in control of the land, the resources, the means of production, all of the social, cultural institutions like they had in Rosewood in the 1920s. So now we have none of that. We are over $1 trillion consumer market, and yet we have no community in the country that looks anything like Rosewood or Tulsa of the 1920s. And here we are in 2023. So
let me put a slick definition on it, Charles, Brother Barron. You know, somebody asked Malcolm X, said, Brother Minister Malcolm X, what do you mean by black nationalism? And to just capsulize what you said, he said, you must control the land, labor, and resources, the economic, politics, and culture where you live. We control none of that where we live. And that just capsulizes it. And, right. and when we think of it, here we are expected to spend $2 trillion this year in consumer dollars. Uh-huh. We control no land. We control no labor. We control no resources. We do not control the economics, the politics, or the culture where we live. All right. And then we, by definition, we can't even call where we live communities, because communities presuppose that you control those things.
Absolutely.
That's right.
We are neighborhoods in capitalist and colonial communities.
Go ahead now. That's what I'm talking about.
And so if we clear on these little definitions, it'll help us to see what the problem is.
That's right.
And we won't get blinded by black colonialists or neo-colonialists. Because they blinded us in New York State. They're blinded. Because you look at, oh my God, every office that we thought that could be held, that would be the cause for change for better, is now being held by people that look just like us, and things are getting worse for us.
Getting worse.
That's right. And check this out. You hear Dr. Smalls. Dr. Smalls is breaking it down the way it should be. You know how they really get us? On racism. Now, you know, I am dead set against racism and fighting against it all my life. But this is what they want you to do. They want you to focus on racism, because then you're focusing on fighting for inclusion into a fatally flawed colonial capitalist system that will never, ever benefit you. So you fight against racism and you say, hey, we only had white presidents. We need a black president. Here, give him Barack Obama, but let's keep the system the same. We have a black female vice president.
Their audio started to have some technical difficulties, but I think you get his point that Brother Barron was making. They're giving us pre-selected so-called black politicians, whether federally or nationally or locally. And not only are we still not getting anything that makes our lives better, but it's actually, our lives are getting worse. They're getting worse. So, family, this is what we're dealing with. Look at all of these so-called black people in Congress that we have. But still, four of the main things that we need to make our lives better over the last 50, 60 years or so, it's on your screen. We got all these black congressmen and congresswomen, but we still haven't gotten our reparations. We still have no hate crime bill for us, so-called black people, specifically. You got an Asian hate crime bill. You got other hate crime bills, but not one for us. And according to FBI statistics, every year that they put them out, we are the leading victims by far of hate crimes in the U.S. Why we ain't got no hate crime bill? We want and argue and march and fight for police reform. Y'all ain't seen no reform. Ain't nothing changed. What changed since George Floyd? The world was protesting. What changed? Nothing. All it did was just sit back and wait us out. They get tired of walking for too long. We don't have to deal with this a few more months. Yeah, it's really bad this time, but just wait it out. They're going to go home. They're going to stop. And that's what happened. We don't really own no land to shake a stick at here in the U.S. And as Dr. Claude Anderson tells us, you know, as a community, a so-called black community, we still only own or don't own no more than 1% of wealth here in the United States. That's the same thing that we own when so-called slavery ended. We haven't progressed not one bit because of fools like the fools you see on your screen right now, which is why I say
every brother ain't a brother, cause a color just as well could be undercover.
They're not for us. They look like us. Some of us may be related to them, may have voted for them, but they're doing nothing for us in those positions. But just pacifying us, patting us on the back, giving us fish and chicken dinners, coming to our churches, you know, skinning and grinning, hugging and kissing the babies, you know, just patting us on the top of the head like they're pets when the election time come around. And they go back and continue to do how they little parties, they little group, enjoy the little extra crumbs that this systematic white supremacist system gives them. Like, you do a good job now. You want to talk to your people, keep them under control, and keep them voting. That's all they're doing. Again, this is why I say all the time,
every brother ain't a brother, cause a color just as well could be undercover.
They're working for the colonial system, the system of systematic white supremacy. These are your McManagers. They're still selling McDonald's hamburgers for McDonald's. They're not going into McDonald's making improvements and things that help the community. No. They're just the McManagers. And if you make enough noise, they'll give you a McDonald's coupon. They say, oh, well, here you go. For the next time you come back in and give us some more of your money, we'll give you a little bit of a discount. Here's a coupon. There you go, baby. All right, see you next time. That's literally how they're treating us. If you can't tell by now, Katie Smooth is not a big fan of voting is going to solve our problems, because this is what we're getting with our votes. Nothing that we need or want but these fools on your screen. Yeah. But at the same time, all of these immigrants coming in, and be clear on this, they are not, I repeat, they're immigrants. They are not U.S. citizens. They're getting billions of aid and assistance and free housing, free food, free, as Professor Barron said, in some places they're getting $800 of free money every month. free utilities, free clothing. Just go down the list. Free healthcare. They're getting, and they're not even citizens. They have paid no taxes to earn any of this assistance. Meanwhile, many of us, most of us in the so-called black community, we're in our neighborhoods in sheer poverty. Can't get rental assistance. Can't get much of any of these other assistance. If we do get any assistance, it's like a SNAP or something like that. It's just $100 or so per person. They're giving us crumbs if we do get anything, and they're making it so insanely hard for us as citizens to get the assistance that we pay taxes to get and have access to. But these people just walked across the little border. Hey, y'all. Hola. We're very hungry. Can we, y'all got something for us to eat? Y'all got some place for us to sleep? Can you help us out? They ain't put nothing on it, but billions all across the U.S. is being spent and given to them for free. Do you see that, fam? Don't even get me started about the well over $200 billion in counting that's been given to Ukraine. They're not U.S. citizens. They're not. But this is who y'all voted for. This fool Biden, who sat literally in y'all face before the election and insulted every so-called black person in the United States by saying, you ain't black if you don't vote for me. Remember? And they had their little token, Kamala, they try to pass off as being black. Talking about, we're not going to do nothing for the so-called black community, for just the so-called black community. Oh, we're trying to help everybody. Y'all remember that? But most of y'all went out there and still voted for these fools. But we have no reparations. We have nothing. Life has just gotten worse for us. As I say here on One Brothas Mind often, smash the like button, share this report on all your social media with all your peoples, and be sure to be subscribed to One Brothas Mind, where we try to bring you the information and facts you need. And as I also say, because I know what a lot of y'all saying, well, we got to vote. Our ancestors died for our right to vote. No, they didn't. That's a lie. That's a cap. They didn't give their lives up and shed their blood and be beaten down just for us to have the right to vote. No. We're going, well, what did they do? I'll tell you. They did all of that so we would have the right to vote for tangible things that would make our lives better and safer in this country. That's what they died and shed their blood for. Not just to go in and punch a thing and never get nothing for it. Just the act of voting. No. They went through that. Fought through that because they knew how important it was for us to be able to, for their kids, their grandkids, one day to be able to go vote and have a say, being their vote for tangible things that would make our lives better. So they wouldn't have to, their kids, their grandkids and great grandkids would not have to deal with what you see on your screen. No more. Whether it's the police, the government, or whoever. You vote for people that's going to put in laws that's going to make our lives better. that's going to make our lives safer, as I just showed you in the previous screen. Reparations, hate crime bills, land ownership, police reform, etc., etc. Right? So stop saying that. Anybody you hear saying that, check them on it. Especially, as our brother Jason Black always says, especially them old niggas. the older, oh man. The older community, they like 55 and above, man, they stuck. Most of them are stuck. They just, we got to go vote now. Now we're going down to the vote election center. We're going to get our fish dinner and we going to vote. Now I voted. I'm making things better. What did you vote for? What are you getting for your vote that's going to make your life better tomorrow? Or when whoever this fool you voted in takes office? What are they going to do? Exactly. So, family, again, I'm not trying to hold you long with this one. Want to offer some of the solutions. Our brother Barron said just all out revolution because he realizes how dire things are for us. And they're getting made worse with all these additional people that are coming into our border that are going to be used as replacement slave labor, right? They're welcome. I got no issue with them coming in. We have the same enemy, the same oppressor, right? So one of the things that some of us have started to do, as our brother Barron said, we have no communities. We have no ownership in land and all that stuff. There are just a few groups that have started realizing that and saying, you know what, we have to start buying large plots of land. We come together, we put money in a pool, we buy us 1,000 or a couple thousand acres where we can find them and just build our own communities on those parcels of land that we own. Whether you do that type of thing here in the U.S., there's a group in Georgia that's doing it. I've even heard of another group that literally, there was a whole small town, I forget where it was, that was for sale here in the U.S. They bought the whole town. It was pretty much virtually abandoned. They just bought the whole town and they're just revitalizing and fixing it back up and everything. And it's basically going to be a so-called black community. But the group that bought that town, as soon as they bought the town, and as soon as they started building it back up, y'all know what's going to happen. Here they come. They coming. Y'all know who. Billy Bob and them. The Karen and Darrens. Oh, they mad. Wait. You got a group of black people go outside of y'all cities and go buy a small town that was for sale that y'all didn't even want. Right? And start to fix it up, build it up. And now, because y'all mad, they started giving that group of people problems with coordinating the infrastructure systems. You know, like the electrical grid and electrical systems, because that's coming from the main city. It's not generated in that town. You see what I'm saying? So they got to have some connections. And then how do they handle law enforcement? Well, the group of black people, they already have their plan for enforcing the law in their own town, in this so-called black town. But the city and state, they want control over that. They want to be able to come in and still terrorize us, even in communities that we set up of our own and whatnot. So that's why I say, I mean, is buying large plots of land or towns in the U.S. and fixing them up and basically making them black towns, is that an option? Yes, but doing that, you have to understand we're still behind enemy lines, dog. Whether it's one of us that buys a piece of land to create our own homestead, or we buy a whole little, few thousand acres and do it as a group, we're still surrounded by the enemy here in the U.S. So that's why I'm actually giving a little bit more look toward doing the same type of thing, but somewhere outside of the U.S. Because there's groups that are doing it now outside of the U.S. There's several doing it in various parts of Africa as well. Do your research. But again, even in that scenario, there's pros and cons to that as well. You got to do your research and make sure you understand if you decide to do it and you realize the importance of us having our own spaces and being in control of them, you got to do your research and make sure you understand the goods and the bad, so you know how to deal with those, right? Because whether it's just you buying a property for yourself or a group of black people, getting a larger property, especially here in the U.S., you're going to have to do all this on your screen. You're going to have to secure it because they're coming. Billy Bob and Karen and Darren and them, they coming. Right? You're going to have to put barriers of some significant type all around that property. On the property edge, not around the house or houses, actually around the whole edge, the extent of the property. You're going to have video surveillance, motion detection, fencing, lighting, all that. Whatever kind of fence you're going to think you're going to have, you're going to have to close it off, in some kind of way and secure it because they coming. And in most cases, if you do it here in the U.S., they're going to come before you even get finished. They're going to start coming. One example is our brothers and sisters there in Colorado. Y'all remember that story? I think he has like 1,000 acres in Colorado he bought. And ever since he bought that, he's surrounded by them. They started terrorizing him, deleting his farm animals. They actually unalived one of his workers that worked with him on his farm. And the police have been participating in terrorizing that black couple. I forget their last name. Y'all drop it in the chat or the comments. But if you haven't, look up Colorado black farmers terrorized or harassed or whatever. It'll pop up. One mistake that they made, they bought the land, but they did not secure their whole perimeter. And so they went through it. They tried to start adding cameras and things after the harassment and terrorism started. But the police came and took down their cameras that they added. Yeah. Because they needed to capture what was happening. The terrorists that were showing up all hours of the night and whatnot, doing things, they needed to be able to get that on recorded. So they did not have a security plan, is what I'm saying, fam. And if you're going to buy some land, you definitely have to have a security plan. It has to be one of your primary parts of buying that land that you install and have fully operational as soon as you buy that land, because they're coming. In addition, as far as the different groups of black people that are buying up and creating our own so-called black towns in different ways, we have to also develop our own critical infrastructure for those black towns. We can't stay reliant on them. Because like I said, if we're getting anything from the main state or main cities that are nearby, they're going to use that stuff as ways to try to control our black towns if we establish them here in the U.S. And that one example, as far as them still getting electricity from the main city nearby, you had to make plans to not do that. Yes, it's more expensive, but you're going to have to make several huge solar farms on the land of this black town. So you generate your own electricity and you're self-contained as far as electricity for this black town. You don't need their stuff. You don't have to rely on them and depend on them. Things of that nature. Right? I mean, it's doable. Like he said, we one of the, what does the statistics say? We have the wealth of like the 13th largest country in the world, but we just have it as a community. But we got no land like that. We got no country. But if we were to use our wealth differently and build up our own black towns, whether it be here in the States or abroad, it's doable. We got the wealth to do it. We just don't have the so-called togetherness. And as we build these black towns up in, example of what used to be, like he said, in Rosewood and Black Wall Street in Tulsa, we buy black only within our town. We shop amongst ourselves. Keep our dollars circulating in our town. That makes and keeps all of us wealthy and builds wealth and what have you. Do you see that? And lastly, the ultimate solution, family. Yeah, you see it right. Yeah, I'm going there. We have to come to learn and confirm who we are and whose we are by reading scripture. I know I just lost a bunch of y'all. I'm going, man, here you go. What's that got to do with anything? I'm going to show you right here on your screen. Pause the video if you need to. We're going to start at verse 2 at the top. It's in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verse 2 through 7. Yahuwah is speaking to his chosen people, to us. Right? In Deuteronomy, Yah tells us if we are obedient to his word, how he's going to bless us. And then if we're not obedient to his word, how he's going to curse us. Right? Then, because he's Yah, he knows what we were going to do. We were going to be disobedient. And we have been. That's why we've been cursed. Right? But he also told us in Deuteronomy here on your screen how to end the curse, when we can end the curse and how to end it. And he's speaking to us and he's saying, and basically, y'all, ye, my chosen people, and if y'all shalt return unto the Lord thy Yah, and shalt obey his voice according to all that I, Yahuwah, commanded thee this day, thou and thy children, with all thy heart and with all thy soul, that then, verse 3, the Lord thy Yah will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations, whither the Lord thy Yah has scattered thee. If any of thine be driven out unto the uttermost parts of heaven, from thence will the Lord thy Yah gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. And the Lord thy Yah will bring thee into the land which thy fathers possess, and thou shalt possess it. And he will do thee good, and multiply thee above thy fathers. That's why you got to read and study your scripture. Develop a personal relationship with Yeshua HaMashiach. Live obedient to scripture only. No paganism, no idolatry. And as we do that, what is Yahuwah going to do? Verse 7. And the Lord thy Yah will put all these curses. What curses? The curses that we've been under for the last 400 years? And the Lord thy Yah will put all these curses upon who? Thine enemies, and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee. That's what Yahuwah is going to do. We got to do our part. And as we do our part, more and more of us return to living according to scripture only. Verse 7. It's actually already beginning or begun to happen. A lot of the disasters and crazy things that's going on. It's already starting to happen. Okay? And in addition to that, just for those who, well, you said 400 years, where'd that come from? Right here in Genesis chapter 15, verse 13. And he said to Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs. No, it was not Egypt. I got reports on that. Go to One Brothas Mind, scroll down to the biblical playlist, and under playlist, and just click play. I go over it over and over again, explaining why it was not Egypt. And shall serve them, and they shall afflict them for 400 years. Verse 14. It's very important. Because some of y'all saw me put, we ain't got no reparations, right? Oh, we're going to get them. I hear so many black people, so-called black people, oh, we ain't going to never get them. Oh, man, you tripping, y'all crazy. Okay, well, I believe scripture. I believe the word of Yah. Right here in verse 14, what does it say? Read it with me. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. Remember I told you it's already started a moment ago? It's already, the judgment has already begun because the 400 years is over. And afterward, after the judgment, shall they come out with great substance. That's our reparations right there. It's literally in scripture. It's going to happen. So you can take out all the guesswork. You can stop all the arguing and heavy breathing and worry and concern. It's right there. Now, for many of my listeners, y'all call yourselves Christians. So I got a question. Do you believe in scripture? Do you believe in Yah's word or don't you? Yeah. And why is all this important? About, again, if you still, it still ain't registered to you, why reading and studying scripture, building a personal relationship with Yeshua HaMashiach, why that's important? Because he's coming. Yeshua HaMashiach is coming back. And he's coming back for his people, specifically those of us who have returned to worshiping Yah, living obedient according to scripture for the 1,000-year millennium kingdom and beyond. Are you going to be a part of that group or not? Say, don't answer. Save it. The way you show, if you're going to be a part of the group that Yeshua HaMashiach comes back for, and this includes companions, it's not just so-called foundational black Americans or the descendants of the transatlantic slave trade. It's not just so-called black people. It companions also are and can be a part of Yeshua HaMashiach's people when he returns. Because it's everybody that by faith accepts Yeshua HaMashiach as their Lord and Savior. The real Yeshua HaMashiach from Scripture. Not the white Jesus you see on the walls running around. No. Yeshua that had skin of burnt brass, hair of sheep's wool, hair like wool, eyes red as fire. Which group are you going to be in? And this concludes this broadcast for One Brothas Mind. We thank you for joining us. And as a part of the new Black media, B1 choices are mandatory and being on code is required. But never fear, Yeshua HaMashiach is with you always. Shalom.